Hey everyone, welcome to the Mr. Teacher, Mr. Preacher podcast and YouTube channel. This is Mr. Teacher Kevin Vota, and I am here with you with another Mr. Teacher mini lesson. And we are in our series on industriousness, the first pillar of John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. And this is the third mini lesson in that series after we've covered atomic industriousness and astronomical industriousness. So do check those out as well. Industriousness at its smallest, and then industriousness at its biggest. And today we're going to be covering professional industriousness. Before we do, we're going to check in with our two affiliates that support this channel. One of the best ways to support the channel and the podcast is through supporting these very selective affiliates that we agree with. And the first is Amari, and Amari is the mental wellness company. So we at Mr. Teacher, Mr. Preacher podcast know the value of mental wellness and mental fitness. And one of the best ways you can do that is taking care of your gut-brain axis. And Amari lets you do that through their wide range of products, including the Fundamentals Pack. That's one of the easiest ways to get started. Check that out, along with the Happy Juice Pack. It's a new kit as of this recording. And a great way to start the day with some hydration. Makes it easy, makes it taste great. The watermelon edge that comes with that, grape is great too, is a good way to try that out. It has the edge, the energy plus, and then Mentabiotics. You mix all three of those together and you throw it with some 24, I would do 24, 16 to 24 ounces of water, and you're ready to rock the day with some good, clean energy. And Amari lets you be at your best by giving you full assurance that not only are you taking care of your first brain, but you're taking care of that second brain in your gut as well. So check out amare.com, amare.com/36505. That's where you'll find our brand partner page, and take care of your mental health and wellness and fitness, whether you're an athlete, a coach, or a parent. Moving on to number 2 is our friends at bookshop.org, the local indie bookstore underdogs. As we are a channel all about learning, you got to get the books, and bookshop.org is the place to do that. We'll be getting the links below, but all the books that we have covered under Industriousness, including The Comfort Crisis, The Talent Code, Atomic Habits, and Effortless, as long as the ones that we have appeared in our mini lessons, such as the first 20 hours, that's in our other video on meta industriousness, and also the 4-Hour Chef. Great place to get your books is bookshop.org. It supports local bookstores, indie bookstores, and that is the place you want to be if you're going to support the underdogs in the world, those small towns and people who are encouraging learning, just like we are encouraging you to do. So go to bookshop.org or check out our curated link below with all the books that we've covered under Industriousness. Good way to support the channel and to support local bookstores. It's a win-win. Love that. Getting into the mini lesson today, we're going to be talking about professional industriousness and going pro, as defined by Mr. Industriousness himself, Steven Pressfield. If you don't know Steven Pressfield, he's a prolific author with a wonderful story. He's been featured on a number of podcasts now as of recently. Has an amazing background of doing the work, as he says, and coining this term called resistance. And the 3 books that we're going to be covering in little snippets from each are Turning Pro. I have all 3 books sitting here. Got them as well from our friends at bookshop.org. So Turning Pro, tap your inner power and create your life's work. That is number 1. Number 2 is Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be. Another interesting curve. And last one is Do the Work. And that was a shorter spin-off of The War of Art, an ever popular book about going through the creative act and a project of any sorts. Very popular among creatives. Those are the 3 books that are going to help us when we talk about this idea of going back, professional industriousness, this idea of turning into a professional through work versus just working for work's sake, as Tim Ferriss would say in the 4-Hour Work Week. So in this episode, we're going to take snippets from each of these books. I'd be very curious to ask Steven about what order he would put this in, if there was a chronological order. I had a little bit of fun pondering that on a pretty long car ride trip of turning pro, putting your ass where your heart wants to be, and doing the work. So we're going to go in this order for today. It seemed to line up pretty well in terms of how to become a professional. And we're going to go from being an amateur to a professional. And Mr. Industriousness, Steven Pressfield, talks about there's a distinct before and after period of when he was an amateur and when he became a professional. And he's very forthright and vulnerable with his failings of being able to ship his work and getting defeated by resistance. So I do encourage you to check out all three. A lot of recurring themes, and I like that because we all need the reminders of what it actually looks like to turn pro and be a professional. Let's start with the amateur. And Steven gives a number of writings to what an amateur is defined, as well as the characteristics of an amateur, and that it's okay that we are all amateurs at one point in whatever it is that we do. So I'm going to read these words just to give you a flavor, and then we'll move on to the checklist of an amateur. So an amateur is young, dumb, innocent, good-hearted, well-intentioned, brave, inventive, and resourceful. So there are admiring attributes of being an amateur. We all enter the game as amateurs. An amateur does have aspirations and dreams. It can be willing to pay the price and is not evil or crazy or deluded or demented. They're trying to learn. So hats off to the amateurs. And yet, there's still more. These are redeeming qualities, I would say. And then the checklist that Steven gives in the books, specifically turning pro, aren't so redeeming. And that's why we need this distinct shift of professional industriousness. What is the checklist? Well, let's read them. Part 1. Number 1, an amateur is terrified, an egotist and narcissist, lives by the opinions of others. That is a scary one, at least to me. Number 3. Number 4, permits fear to stop him or her from acting. 5, easily distracted, seeks instant gratification, and is jealous. So we can start to see that as much as those initial traits and definitions aren't necessarily a bad thing, these are things that prevent you from, as Steven says, doing the work, fighting resistance. These are things that get in the way. These are things not to be. And continuing on, he has 7 more. An amateur lacks compassion for himself, beats oneself up, seeks permission from self or others, as if you need permission at all. 10 and 11 go together, lives for the future or lives in the past. And the goal is to getting into the present, as we're going to see, just what matters now. Number 12 is will be ready tomorrow. The excerpt there is that they have a million dreams keeping them awake, Greatest Showman, and yet they all start tomorrow. Number 13, gives his power away to others. And number 14 is asleep. All these are attributes of an amateur. And Steven likes to develop this case for what that looks like, so we can contrast it with what it as in a professional really looks like and really does. And he has his own story, as I've said, where you can tell when he was an amateur and what that looked like in terms of his life, in terms of his ability to ship and his overall just work. And that there was a time that he would write, he is a writer, fiction, nonfiction, screenplays and other things that were garbage at this time. He was an amateur and he it wasn't good enough yet. And then he made this distinct shift to being a professional, that before and after concept. So let's make that shift with him. Now, to do that, one thing I would encourage you is if you're listening along, get a piece of paper. Okay? And there are 29 prompts here. Are you a professional? Here's a good way to tell, yes or no. Just, we don't need to score these. Just check it a yes or check it a no. So take this and go very slowly with me and check off, yes, I got that, or no, I need more work. I'm still living a little bit in the amateur world. And so number your paper 1 to 29. You don't have to write the prompts, or you can just freeze the screen. Write them down if you want to. I summarize them or shorten them up for you. And each of these was little excerpts within Turning Pro that I thought were immensely valuable towards identifying what it means to be professionally industrious at scale. So we've talked about working small with atomic, having a bigger goal with astronomical industriousness. And then our third video is on meta industrious, working smart. And I think this is a part of working smart, is having this persona and this ability to show up. And that's what a professional, as you'll see, is. So with that in mind, check yes or check no. The professional. What does the professional do? How does it different than the amateur? Well, number one, the professional shows up every day on schedule. It doesn't have to be every single day. There are some artists and creators that show up 24/7, 365. And Steven mentions a couple of those in the book, but shows up when they show up. Shows up every day. Number two, stays on the job all day. When there's work to do, they do the work. Number three, committed over the long haul. Are you committed over the long haul? Yes or no? Do you show up every day? Yes or no? Do you stay on the job all day? Yes or no? Number four, you know, or you value that the stakes are high and real. And he goes pretty existential there, and literal as well. Number five, are you patient? Professional is patient. Number six, professional seeks order, structure. Do you have order and structure in what you do as an athlete, coach, or parent? And those are the first six. Let's move on to the next ones. Part two, the professional demystifies. So instead of keeping it nebulous, taking away that, and kind of goes with structure as well. Number eight, yes or no, acts in the face of fear. We talked about that in the first mini lesson episode on atomic industriousness, where you are going to face this initial struggle. It's like the comfort crisis, those comfort creeps. There will be fear on that front end. Steven calls that resistance, goes into great detail on resistance and how to beat it. But do you act yes or no in the face of fear? Expect fear when you get to whatever it is you're doing. If you're not feeling fear, you're probably not pushing that challenge skills ratio anyways. Number nine, the professional accepts no excuses. Do you accept excuses? Yes or no? Number 10, plays it as it lays, just as it is. Yes or no? 11 and 12, is prepared and does not show off. Do you come to your work, your play, the thing, prepared, ready to go? We'll talk about that later at the end of this mini lesson about a practice and what that requires. Showing off, pretty simple. Let your bat do the talking. You know, don't show off. Yes or no? Do you show off a little bit? Not celebrate. I want to make that distinction in another video when we talk about enthusiasm, but it's not celebrating with your team. It's drawing attention to yourself. Do you show off? Yes or no? Continuing on, the professional dedicates himself to mastering technique. Do you do that? Are you mastering your technique, whatever that technique is? Does not hesitate to ask for help. Does not take failure or success personally. Does not identify with his or her instrument. Doesn't get too close to it. 17, endures adversity. And 18, self-validates. And that means, do you coach yourself, encourage yourself? Okay. Yes or no on those? The technique, the humility to ask for help, taking things personally. That's hard. Failure or success personally, where you attribute too much of yourself to said failure or success. It just is what it is. The problem is the problem. It's usually mechanical. Identifying, again, you're getting too close. Got to detach. Adversity, expecting that. That's a little bit more deeper form of discomfort. And then self-coaching. Last set right here, part 4. The professional reinvents herself. Have you reinvented yourself? So you were A, and did you grow into B or C? As Shakespeare said, we play many parts in this life, and we play many parts in our careers, whether you move from an athlete to a coach to a parent, or athlete to a parent, or even within a career as an athlete. Do you move and change as you get better? And as people graduate, as you shift teams year by year, sometimes you need to play this role and sometimes you need to play that role. So you got to reinvent yourself constantly. Have you done that, or are you willing to do that, eager to do that? Number 20 is recognized by other professionals. I wrote a paper on this in college. It was one of my favorite things is that idea of motorcyclists that just give each other the head nod or the wave. Professionals, professional industrious people doing the work can see that, and they give you the proverbial hat tip. Gym rats, field rats, we have that concept where the people that are constantly working on their game, and you can tell it and you can see it by the way people carry themselves. You can see it in their eyes, and you can see it all over. So do you have that? Do people recognize you as a blank? It's kind of like that identity-based habits. Do people know you as the soccer kid? Hat tip to Jake, Mr. Preacher, the baseball kid, the baseball coach. You just are known as. That is a good indicator that you are professional. 21, courageous. Yes or no? You're going to need some courage if you're going to be facing discomfort, as we covered in the first few seconds of flow. It takes courage, and the courage is calling, as Ryan Holiday wrote. 22, will not be distracted. Oh man, there's about 1,000 distractions, and resistance tries to distract us with whatever is our weakest, our kryptonite. But do you get distracted? I think all of us do get distracted at times. But if we're leaning on a spectrum, yes or no, do you have the capacity to not get distracted? 23 is ruthless with himself. And so you don't give yourself too much of a leash, right? You're hard on yourself. And this kind of goes with number 24. The last one is you also have compassion for yourself wherever you're at, right? And that's a hard balance. There's a lot to say there of how do you do that. And that self-compassion and self-ruthlessness is an interesting balance to maintain. That'd be something to work on, holding yourself to a high standard while at the same time allowing yourself to be where you're at that day, that moment, in the broad spectrum of the journey. So if you're early in the journey, knowing that this is a long game, and saying, hey, it's the phrase, you're perfect just the way you are, and you could use a lot of work. And holding that, you're perfect the way you are, that's compassion. And yet ruthless is you could still use a lot of work, as we all could, right? So hold that balance. So as you go through that, you have that yes or no. We do have some more. I was wrong. There's one more set. There's a lot of these. Part 5. Yes or no? Do you live in the present as a professional? Do you defer gratification? Meaning you don't get what you want right now. You can put off and know that there is that astronomical, industrious goal down the road, whatever that might be, that epic win, that high heart goal, so on and so forth. 27, 28 go together. Does not wait for inspiration. Inspiration come and goes. So motivation, we could debate about motivation, whether it comes and goes. Jocko thinks it's a feeling, comes and goes. I would say that you don't have your wires crossed or your curiosity stacked properly, but they draw from multiple wells. You don't wait for it. You just sit down and go, which we're going to see. 28 says, does not give his power away to others. Similar theme as previous checklist items. I forget which ones. But it's in your power. So there's this internal locus of control that I can and I will. I am, I can, I will do said thing. And number 29 is helps others. along the way. And Steven has a very touching story. I don't want to give it away. If you're an athlete or a coach or a parent, look to people who need that encouragement. It can literally mean the world. A simple comment, a note, an investment, a recognition. Not that somebody accomplished something necessarily, but that, hey, I see you're working really hard. Kind of praising that effort, as Angela Duckworth and Carol Dweck would say, with grit and growth mindset. That gets people to work. And Steven has a great story about somebody who did that for him and then what he did with that note. So with that checklist, add up your totals. How many were yeses and how many were nos? And I am not aware, I didn't look, I'll be honest and frank, whether there was such a assessment of the amateur versus professional. Are you professional? Are you not? I don't know of any specific number that you would need to attain. I think that some of these answers are fluid. By no means is anybody acing this. 29 out of 29. I think all of us have different pieces of this we can work on, but note that. So how many did you get? How many yeses? How much of a pro are you? Like level, I'm a level 17 pro. Okay. All right. Let's run with that. Then look at your nose and say, which of these do I struggle with most? And as we move forward into putting your ass where your heart is, and then also doing the work, how can we mitigate that? And you may have to check out some of the other episodes. I have to go piece by piece and say, okay, this episode or this concept of industriousness would go with that. But do your own work. Be your own N equals 1. Because here's the real kicker of what Steven says. He says, turning pro is a decision. And we noted in the talent code episode that for talent and skill to grow, it takes commitment. And over the long haul, how long are you going to be doing this? You make the choice and the decision, I'm going to be a pro now. I'm going to fulfill these requirements. How do we do that? Now, that's really the key, and that's what we're going to move to. So the other book, little novella, the novella is Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be, physically. So it's location, 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 just like real estate. Whatever that is, the thing that you are working on, that atomic habit, that astronomical industrious, that goal, where do you literally need to be physically to do the thing? Put yourself in the space. And Steven talks about writers and painters, and you got to be with the page, you got to be with the easel, you got to be on, Ableton, creating some music, YouTube, whatever it is. Where do you need to be? What does that look like to do the thing you want to do? Okay. As an athlete, that could be the gym. It could be your garage, the backyard, if you're throwing against, a wall, practicing some pitching. It could be just with your soccer ball in a specific spot. And that's where you need to go, and go there often. Time under tension is how muscles are built, or time under load, TUL. That's what needs to happen for that skills circuit, that myelination to occur. And Steven goes on to talk about ass as commitment, like putting your ass on the line, beyond just physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. Goes into great depth on that. But what does this commitment mean? And he gives some words and phrases for this, some sections. He says commitment means risk. You're putting yourself out there. You're putting, you're going into something that may be hard and it might not turn out, right? I mean, that's what Daniel Coyle talked about with deep practice, or pushing that challenge skills ratio, is that there is risk and you're going to fail. And that's not fun. You can not like it, then tolerate, and then learn to like it. Initially, there's risk on the front end. It doesn't feel good to mess up or to suck. That means you're exposed too. People can see you messing up. Also, not so much fun. There's unknown there. What's on the other side of this? There's power in that. The commitment is long haul. It's a lifelong commitment. I loved the phrase and this book where he talked about this isn't habits. This is not about habits. This is our life. And that speaks to that James Clear concept of identity-based habits. It's not the system this is my life. This is what I do. When I sit here, this is everything to me. Not in the past, not in the future. I just come back to this. I return to it, this magic circle of play. Commitment, you play for keeps. Right? You're going for it. There's no distractions. And he even goes into the concept of serving heaven, so serving this greater purpose. And commitment also has a space, time, a specific time. There's concentration, focus there. Right? You have a goal or a target. You reach for said target. You evaluate that gap. Go back to step A. Commitment has aspirations, right? You have that astronomical goal out there. You don't live out there in the future, but you have something you're working towards, benchmarks along the way. There's no plan B. Steven, Mr. Industrious, Mr. Pressfield had things he tried. It did not work. He kept having to return to the page. What do you return to? There can't be a plan B. Burn that bridge. And then there's commitment, even when it's bogus, especially when it's bogus, that he wrote a screenplay and threw it immediately in garbage or got rejected over and over, page after page, year after year, rejection. And yet he's in the arena. He's taking his licks. He's a pro. And that's a part of the deal. When it's fully intrinsic, as we're going to see, you don't really care. You're writing. Like, that's enough. You're swinging a baseball bat. That's enough. All the other stuff is distractions. The feeling of a ball hitting a bat perfectly, the crack of a wood bat, perfect barreled, launch angle, out of the park, over and over and over. That's enough. Cool. All right, well, let's move to the third book, Doing the Work. What does that take? Well, it takes having a practice. And in yoga, they have a practice, Tai Chi, meditation. They mean practice in a little bit different way. We don't need to go into that. Let's just talk about what this means. Is there's a specific location, and we talked about that before. Where do you do the thing? Have that identified. Read Atomic Habits. Goes into great detail of environmental design and crafting that environment. Second thing is that there is a time of day that you do the work. So it's a location and a time every day, if need be, or a certain set of days, Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. I go to the gym at 4 p.m. and I do this, which comes to the next thing is intention. You don't just show up and do whatever. There is an intention, a plan of attack. I am going to the gym at 4 p.m. working on the deadlift because I'm powerlifting. That's what I'm doing. My astronomical goal is a 500-pound deadlift, 5-6 plates, whatever it is. And I am doing this rep scheme or this progression to get there. And today's is a 3x3. And I'm completing my last set of 3 at 450. Okay. But there's a location, the gym, a time, 4 p.m., and an intention. I have a goal, big goal, and something I'm doing right now. Steven says we come to this work, to this practice as warriors. I love this, the warrior poet kind of concept. The warrior, you're coming here to fight. It takes courage, and he's an author of ancient Sparta, so he's drawn to this concept. Come to it as a warrior, as a fighter. Go into it as a fight. Play for keeps. Play for winning. And also come as a learner. Every time you show up, every time you do the work, every time you practice, you're going to learn something about the craft, about yourself, about something. There's learning there when you're reaching for something and you are going after something along the way. Every stage of the journey, the beginning, the middle, the end, there's something to be learned there. And when you are doing something that is truly in that passion recipe, or is an industriousness concept that you love the work of, there is a depth and a nuance when you talk to expert performers, masters, peak performers. There is a depth there that they're still finding nuance decades down the road. There's still more to learn. Love that. I mean, you hear somebody that has battle scars in this warrior analogy of Pressfield's, and they're still practicing because they still think they can get better. There's that, and that transitions us to the next thing is that there's humility. I don't know it all yet. I still want to find out. And leaning in with that curiosity, that seeking system of effective neuroscience really separates a lot of people. So when you turn pro and you still have this, and it doesn't mean you can't be confident, because remember, skill building is, or confidence building is skill building. So if you have skills, you carry that with you, right? Professionals recognize professionals. At the same time, the real ones, they're struggling, and they're continuing to struggle. It's a never-ending game, and I love that. Absolutely love it. Pressfield, there's no secret why Pressfield stuff is so good. He's lived it, and he gets it. So respect to Pressfield. Along the way, so we're turning pro. We made the decision. We have the practice. We're doing the work. What are some allies along the way? Our friends. And Steven talks about this in Do the Work, and specifically in the section on defeating resistance, a whole concept. I encourage you, get the books, read about it. Resistance will tell you all sorts of things along the way to stop you from whatever endeavor you're after. But what are the friends that can help you? The allies, and Jane McGonigal's super better lingo. Well, one is stupidity. You just don't know. You just, yep, I'm going to go for it. Goes along with that is the next two are stubbornness. You just keep grinding away. You need to be stubborn, like a mule. Have a little bit of blind faith. Like, hey, I'm going to get there one day. And there's a lot of stupidity with blind faith and stubbornness. As you just keep getting at it. Even when everything around you is in turmoil, you just keep chipping away. There's something to be said for staying on the bus and just keep chipping away. Passion, as I would go with Kotler's definition of the intersection of three or more things you care about, never drawing from a single source of motivation, and not the passion like, the fleeting type of passion where you enjoy, cake or something easy. No, I'm talking about the real raw. I want to learn this, and in this environment because of this, I want to, like, there's multiple prongs there that are being mixed together that create a passion. Assistance. Everybody needs assistance along the way, whether that is real or metaphorical. And friends and family. And to be sure, friends and family may try and keep you where you are. Steven even mentions that they could be enemies. That said, along the way, everybody needs a helping hand, encouragement, guidance, knowing when to ask for help. That's your support system. And you share with them, like, hey, here's where I want to go. How can you help me get there? And there's plenty of stories of coaches who've impacted athletes who've had parents, guardians, mentors who've been integral to their success that they thank when they win awards. Everybody's got somebody that's helped them along the way. How about fruit? Well, that's an interesting one. Is that Pressfield mentions that about intrinsic motivation is that the practice is its own reward. The swing, the motion, the reps, the coaching, the parenting, the playing. You don't get the fruits of your labor, whatever's on the other side. The distractions. It's coming back to just, I get to play one more day. I get to learn one more day. The practice has to be its own reward, or the thing. I mean, you can play a game, it doesn't matter. But you need to love the practice. The rest of it really does not matter. I keep repeating that frame, but it has to come back to the replayability of the work. And I mean that in the most gameful sense of the word. Is I love to play this game over and over and over. And that's what you're really after. In the end, what really matters? Well, becoming a pro, according to Steven Pressfield, in the end is nothing grander than growing up. The maturity of a professional, those characteristics versus an amateur. Steven didn't become a pro until, let me place it, if I can remember, 34, 30s. But there was that distinct shift, and you can see what happened to his career as he shifted. It still took him quite a while. Go figure out when his first book was published. And sometimes we do need things to take time. We need to live in the amateur world to know what that's like, to take some knocks, to make that shift, to hit rock bottom, and to come out the other side as a pro. So I encourage you, go check them all out. They're very quick reads, short snippets, punchy writing and concepts. Check them out on bookshop.org, Turning Pro, put your ass where your heart wants to be and do the work. And let me know what you take away about professional industriousness, becoming a pro, and how that applies to doing the work, to being more industrious. Share your score if you're willing and able. What do you want to work on? What are you good at even? I like that just as much as what do we need to work on is what part of being a pro are you great at? Again, be sure to like and subscribe. Mr. Teacher, Mr. Preacher podcast YouTube channel. We'll be wrapping up our industriousness theme and series and moving on to enthusiasm soon. But do check out the other episodes on atomic industriousness, astronomical industriousness, meta industriousness, and the deep reads as well. Those books that we covered and the concept we're trying to take away so we can, as always, learn what lasts in athletics. And industriousness is a big part of that. And I think we've learned just a little bit along the way, and we'll continue to learn as we go through. So I'm going to sign off for this mini lesson. Never stop learning, everybody, because as John Wynne said, when you're through learning, you're through. Thank you for learning, everyone. See ya.